that's the new venue, first time in AWS. So we're pretty excited to come here and to organize our first meetup here. And that's going to become a regular one. So there's going to be this on every month at the same time. So that's going to be very, very regular from now on. So which is a good, really good news. And for our first event, we have two amazing speakers, which are going to talk about everything Kubernetes. But first, before we start, let's do an acknowledgement of the country. So Kubernetes Australia is respectfully acknowledge the traditional land of the Kulin Nation people, and we pay our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So at the K8SUG meetup, our mission is we're very passionate about Kubernetes. I mean, you see us every other week now. We had last week, so we're pretty passionate about that. And so our mission is to accelerate the Kubernetes adoption in Australia and in Melbourne in particular. And we like learning from each other and sharing the best practices around Kubernetes. Today's topics, so we will have Stefan Nantz from Datadog, going to talk about Kubernetes made easy with Kubernetes monitoring made easy with Datadog, and Frank Fan, which is going to talk about platform engineering on Amazon EKS. But before that, before we start with the talk, a bit of what is coming up next with all the other K8SUG meetups. So we have the next one in Singapore, the first one in London, in Amazon again, on the 27th of March, another one in Canada, and the next one will be on the 3rd of April, back again here. We provide a bunch of free Kubernetes fundamental workshops, starting with the 101 on all the basics around Kubernetes, everything related to network, security, and scheduling of administration. Cool. And if you want to join our next fundamental workshop, please scan the QR code, and we will see when we're going to organize this, depending on the number of people joining. I'll leave it for a few seconds. Let's see some hands up. If you need, I'll bring it back later in at the end of the talks. And then just going to talk about our main sponsor. So Yongkang is going to come and talk to you about that.
Thanks again. First of all, thanks everybody for joining us to learn Kubernetes. I just want to spend a few minutes to talk about our sponsors. So it's very important. Without the venue like AWS sponsor us, it's not going to happen. You have the fund loading here. So first of all, we got the CNCF sponsors. Tonight, actually, we're going to give away one free KubeCon event pass. I don't know if anyone hold the KubeCon event. It's the flagship Kubernetes or cloud native event in the world. So the one is actually the one pass is myself. So I got part of the program committee to review the topics. So they sent me a free ticket. So since I already bought my own ticket, so I'm going to offer to anyone, but I want to confirm. So are you guys really want to go? So if you don't want to go, I don't want to waste the ticket. Okay, it is in Paris. So okay. It's the week after next. Okay, the week after next. So you need to confirm, make sure you can travel. Okay, and we are not able to sponsor you the travel. I'm actually paying my own pocket money to travel there as well. Okay, that's very important. If anyone That can be one of the nice, sponsor in terms of all the swags we have tonight. It costs you could be like a $1,600. Okay, so anyone interested? So towards the end, we are going to have the quiz time. First of all, we will ask you. So we will test your knowledge. Okay, test what you guys learn. So based on what you learn, and if you answer correctly and very quickly, you will be on the top. So based on the ranking, we give you the choice. Actually, not just the Kubernetes tickets. We have some more awesome swags from Datadog. Okay, the one I want to show you here. I don't really know what's it. Well, it's a very nice one. What you say? It's a wireless mechanical gaming keyboard. Okay, and also a bunch of some other swags from Datadog. So thanks Datadog. So AWS, I also want to thank AWS. It become our long-term sponsor, not only in Australia. So you guys saw the previous slides in Canada, the same thing, also in UK. So because AWS sponsors, I really want to just spend 1 minute to show you some of the stuff I created about EKS. You guys know EKS? So that's one of the most popular Kubernetes distributors. I want to show you how to quickly to create an EKS cluster. So I'm not going to show you the whole process, but I just want to show you one link, okay? So basically, I just created the video yesterday. So if you type, so E, that's EKS, okay? 129, that's 1.29. That's the latest version of the Kubernetes. So http://129 K8SUG.com. It will take you to the screen. I recorded the video about how to automate at 1.29. It only takes about 15 minutes just to run one command. Okay. So if you guys can't remember the link, doesn't matter. If you do Google, you just search EKS automation, you can find the video. Okay. So that's all I want to talk for now. So I'm going to hand it back to Yen.
Thank you, Cam. I mean, you see us, we see it, I say it every time, but yeah, the meetup will not be able to run without all our volunteers. So wanted to thank them again for helping organizing this type of events. That's, yeah, that takes quite a lot of effort, preparing the sites, preparing the venues, looking for speakers and so on. And so if you want to participate, come and feel free to reach out to us and we'll point you in the direction. And we're always on the lookout for speakers. So if you have any topics you want to talk about on Kubernetes, as you can see, that's a pretty welcoming environment. So if you want to speak about anything related to Kubernetes, how you do this, or some of the things loosely related to Kubernetes, feel free to speak to us and see how we can help you organize the do a talk. So that's it for the introduction. So now we're going to go on with the speakers and the talks. So first off is Stefan, which is going to talk about how to monitor Kubernetes using Datadog. So please feel free to please give him a good round of applause. Yeah, yours.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Stefan Nantz. I work for Datadog, and we'll tell you about what Datadog is doing in the context of Kubernetes. So a couple of things I wanted to show you. So Datadog and Kubernetes, how that works. and how we integrate not only with Kubernetes, but also expand the view beyond Kubernetes. So that means we are having a lot of different data sources. Datadog itself has over 700 integrations in all kinds of technologies. So we're tying that all together and bringing this information into the view of your Kubernetes environment. So that means things like, of course, the Kubernetes metrics, potential APM, log files, and more. And I'll get into all the bits and pieces a little bit later. And of course, that aids all the collaboration between teams. So the KubeOps teams, they usually look after the KubeOps environment. They're feel familiar with what's going on there. And then you have the application developers which doing their thing over there. And that is all fine and well until something goes wrong, or you want to collaborate quickly, or also you want to create centralized dashboards where you want to visualize not only the Kubernetes stuff, but the entire stack from, let's say, from the front end, the application, as well as all the Kubernetes metrics which are relevant to provide that particular service. And then last but not least, we're talking a little bit about logs. And I mean, logs is a fundamental part of pretty much everything what's going on in an environment. And how we can control the logs from within Kubernetes, send them to Datadog, and then essentially have the control on the Kubernetes side, and then put them into the different buckets, how we want to store them. Okay, so first we start with Kubernetes, the Kubernetes Explorer, run you through a couple of out-of-the-box dashboards. Monitors and alerts, of course, is an important part to any kind of operations that you know when something goes wrong and so forth. And then we also have kube costing. So kube costing is essentially functionality where we ingest metrics from Azure and AWS, so, and GCP as well. And we bring these cost metrics into Datadog, and now we're capable of calculating the costing for an AKS cluster based on the resource utilization of a particular namespace or any kind of other label which you might want to slice and dice it on. Okay, so that gives a bit of an overview in terms of how it looks. So with Datadog on Kubernetes, we're not here to tell you about replacing kubectl or not using K9S. But it's essentially what I mentioned before, the integration into all these other areas, right? I touched on logs. We have the events coming from. We have got network virtualization. So that means we can virtualize the traffic in your Kubernetes pods and how they communicate with each other, building out a maps around that, highlighting, for example, retransmits or higher latencies between applications. Then I mentioned APM as well. So application performance monitoring. Of course, a lot of applications running in your containers, and tracing is a common tool to monitor your performance of your applications and also highlighting how these applications communicate with each other. Of course, we do that as well. And I will touch on the automated implementation of that using the admission controller. We have threat detection coming on. We won't get into that much today. We have universal service management, also virtualization of finding out what's going on within your cluster, what services are running. And then, of course, the cloud cost management, what I mentioned too. So, and when you look at all these different integration or these different data sources, then of course you can build these centralized dashboards, which pull in metrics, logs from these different data sources, and we can correlate them utilizing tags in our environment and build out a dashboard which presents you a dashboard for all the components required to deliver a service. Yeah. So we have more and more customers doing that. And then, of course, the next step beyond that is, from a dashboarding point of view, that you extract, for example, business-centric metrics. Yeah, so if you have a web front end, how many connections have you got? How many sales have you done? Right? Is there a sale increasing? When the latency is going up, does it have an impact of a user experience? And so forth. Is it a potentially a latency increase in a database? How does it affect our front user? You get the idea. It's all about creating that big picture of everything which is part of your stack. So And that it doesn't stop there, right? Correlation is the game. And again, we're using tags. It might be a question later at some point. And with cloud cost, right? So we start also more and more getting into the FinOps space. And where that becomes interesting, usually FinOps is a totally separate team in an environment versus the Kubernetes team or the application teams. So what it allows us now, talked about that centralized dashboard. It allows us now to actually put costing to an individual transaction. So where that is important is how much does one transaction cost us to run for a successful save, for example. Yeah, that gives us the ability to be more information driven in terms of, do we want to spend time to make our system faster just for the sake of being faster, or do we actually get a benefit of transaction coming down? Yeah, so hope that gives you a bit of an idea. The key takeaway is we have a lot of different data sources which we ingest, and we can correlate them. And I just presented you with a couple of use cases. So then, of course, monitoring and alerts. So in Datadog, we call them monitors. And we have got an IIOps engine in the back end as well. You will see that throughout there too. So our IIOps engine is something which doesn't need to be configured. It starts looking at your incoming data, whether it's traces, logs, metrics from Kubernetes or wherever they come. And they're pointing out anomalies, forecasting, and so forth, and making you aware of areas of change which you might not be aware of. So it's essentially lots of our customers, they know their KPIs they want to monitor. Yeah, the AIOps engine now is enabling you to be alerted or notified of when some known unknowns pop up. Areas of errors, latencies, which you might not have thought of in the beginning. So, of course, that AIOps engine is called Watchdogs in the theme of the dog scenario. Okay, and all that, bringing together all these different data sources and creating a single source of truth aids, of course, the fastest correlation which you can have, right? So if you look at an application team has an error, the error occurred in particular execution at a particular container, right? And now we bring it together with the application logs, the Kubernetes metrics, the log files from the application, from the Kubernetes, and so forth. And if you look at now the handover from an application developer to Kubernetes, for example, now is as easy as copy and pasting the URL in the Datadog interface and move it across to your colleague. And he literally ends up on in the same page. Yeah, that is a huge advantage of having a single interface or a single tool like Datadog, which makes the collaboration much, much quicker. So I'm talking to customers about that all the time, right? And then we're talking about the benefit of having a single interface. And when we're going just spitballing them up, how long would it take you to go from your centralized logging platform to your APM log form? How long does it take you to eyeball correlate this? And in fact, this is 10 minutes. And most of the customers say, no, it's probably more than that. So if you now say 10 minutes and multiply that by your tier 2 instance where that is happening, there's a lot of time to be saved in a year. Yeah, that's the value Datadog brings to the table. Okay, enough of that talk what we're currently doing, and I run you through the Kubernetes and what we're here for. So how does Datadog integrate with Kubernetes? So you're looking at here at the infrastructure piece for Kubernetes. Now you get presented with a high-level overview of your clusters, namespace, and running. And that runs across your entire environment. So obviously you can see we have 16 clusters running here, number of nodes, deployments, and so forth. And that is just the overview page. All these metrics, of course, in the backend, they're freely usable for you. So, and here a couple of examples from a troubleshooting pattern point of view. So you've got here a synchronization phase of your pods, for example, or deployments being unavailable, and so forth. See, it's nicely representing in a graphical way, representing what's going on in your environment. So what is also unique about Datadog, for example, if you like any of those these widgets, you can see this one here. You can actually copy and paste it to another one. So if you are interested in that particular widget here, you can just simply copy it and create a dashboard and paste that widget into that. We do that. I'll show you that in a little while. Okay, that's fine. Okay, cool. So that's from a troubleshooting point of view, where it's coming from. And then here, for example, resource utilization is another thing. So that goes in the direction of optimization of your clusters, when to add or remove the particular node and so forth to make sure. So here you got the over-provisioned workload, for example, or under-provisioned workloads, which highlight what areas you have options to fine-tune it. So that's a very high-level overview from an interface. So let's get a little bit into the resource utilization as well. So this is now our Explorer view within Datadog, and you can see that we have all our information from Kubernetes coming in, and we're grouping them up with deployments, namespace, and cluster name. And it presents you with this overview, and then you can go dive in deeper, for example, by application or by tags. So, and when I talk about tags, Datadog is using tags to correlate all these different data sources, right? So within Kubernetes, all the labels which you already have set up, let's say cost center, team, contact, whatever you're setting up there, we can ingest into Datadog and you use them as tags. So that means all this slicing and dicing and filtering and so forth, what you can see here, yeah, that is namespace and the default tags which we've got ingesting. Your custom labels will show or can show up there as well. So it gives you great flexibility in terms of understanding what is going on. So we're using exactly that. So I'm working with a customer at the moment, and we are running a good logging project with them, and they already had cost centers, team name, and so forth in their labels. So it didn't take us long to pick these up, ingest all the log files, and now in the back end, we're working with them to be able to granularly calculate the logging cost for the individual namespaces. Namespaces, and then also what's important for them, the cost center that they know whom to charge back with. Okay, so if we go then to our map, right? So the map is essentially a heat map of all our, in this instance, we are still grouped by deployment, name, and cluster name. It's a heat map of all our clusters in our environment. So currently we are highlighting the restart counts, but you can use other CPU utilization and so forth as well. All these widgets here as well, and then you can dive in deeper in one of those as well and start investigating those. Yeah, so this widget is also available in dashboards. So that means if you have an application stack, you can virtually have a heat map on your dashboard and then dive in deeper and see what's going on. So in here then, now we're going into a particular cluster, into a particular pod. So we can see the manifest in here and how it's been configured. We're building out the related resources of that particular piece. Here's a new one which popped up. Actually, it's the first time I saw it. It's in alpha. So in here, I might mention as well, Datadog introduces new features quite rapidly. So this is the alpha. But usually when I see beta in the product, in our demo environment, I'm feeling quite comfortable talking about it because I know within the next 3-4 months, that feature will be released and pop out in our customer environment. The speed of innovation at Datadog is, and I work for many vendors, as you can see, I lost a lot of hairs there as well, but it's really unparalleled. It's a very rapid deployment. So, and then you can see we have got the log files correlated here as well from our environment. So that is now all the log files coming from your container on the applications as well. So the applications can, of course, send the log files to standard out, or they can also send them to a logging library. So let's see, here APM, I'll show you APM a little bit later. So, and you get metrics from your Kubernetes environment and so forth as well. Okay. With this, I wanted to show you also the out of the box. So I mentioned earlier that Datadog has about 700 integrations with all kinds of technologies. And what that means is not only that we import all this information from these technologies, but it also means that we want to make your life as easy as possible. So all your time to value as quick as possible. So, and what I did here, I clicked on all integrations. Though that means we are only looking at out-of-the-box dashboards. So if you look at Kubernetes, you can see that we have a fair amount of dashboards there. That is essentially a sample dashboards which are using all the metrics coming from Kubernetes and already visualizing in a meaningful way. Datadog itself is using Kubernetes to provide the SaaS platform, the Datadog platform themselves, and we are running one of the biggest Kubernetes clusters on the planet. So our expertise within Kubernetes is quite extensive, and of course we're using our own product to monitoring itself, if that makes sense. Okay, so if you look at one of those here, for example, we're going into a pod overview, and here you see all these visualizations already. So if you now in Datadog, if you're now interested in a particular scenario, what you have in mind, you want to visualize certain metrics, that's a fantastic starting point to find the metrics you're after, and it's already pre-configured for you. And earlier I mentioned to you as well, the power of being able to have a centralized network and combining all these different metrics from Kubernetes, from your application, from your AWS resources, and building out a dashboard. So what you can do here, let's say you want to have running pods by namespace. We can do a copy here. And if I go into new dashboard, yeah, I just open a normal dashboard and I can do Control V and I paste that widget in there. So if you now look at if you look at this, and we go back to our dashboard list, and you look at all our integration, yeah, you get the idea how easy it is to get a very comprehensive dashboard up and running very quickly by just pick and choosing the individual widgets you're interested in and bring them across. So after that, all what you need to do is using tags, yeah, the tags which we are picking up from your labels, which you mentioned earlier, or for example, in the instance of AWS, we're picking up all the tags in AWS. Let's say if you have a team, service name, cost center, then we can now filter down these metrics from these different sources and present them in one interface. So very quick to get up and running with a comprehensive dashboard. There's no querying language required, so it's very intuitive to use. So another scenario, what I wanted to show you as well is kube costing. So if you look at kube cost, and we're looking at the Kubernetes cost overview. So this is now a dashboard which is combining AWS billing metrics with Kubernetes. Yeah. So you get here the overall cost for Kubernetes. You get your breakdown by namespace and so forth. Again, it's a very comprehensive dashboard, and you can copy and paste or clone this one and modify that. So in order to actually get an edit mode, I just quickly need to clone it, and then I wanted to show you something, because you're all familiar with different metrics and so forth. So here we have got a dashboard which calculates the costing for a particular namespace based on resource utilization. So that means here, let's say you have a 10-node Kubernetes cluster, and one namespace, for argument's sake, is using 90% of the resources. You want to charge back 90% of the costing to that particular namespace. Yeah, then you have got underlying labels, cost center, whatnot, and you build it back. So I wanted to quickly show you, and I'm talking about integration and merging different data sources, how that is actually being done, on the technical side. So you can see that we're getting cloud cost metrics in from AWS, and then we have all these different metrics here from Kubernetes. And then on the bottom, we have a couple of calculations, which then calculate the costing for that particular resource. So that's an example how we can use different data sources and do certain calculations and massage them even further. That, of course, is not isolated to AWS and Kubernetes metrics, but also APM or any of the other data sources which you may have. So that allows you then to be very specific or have the flexibility of using different metrics to for your calculations, which you might have to do. Okay, so one thing I wanted to show you as well as part of the out-of-the-box scenario, I wanted to also show that Datadog is coming with monitors. So monitoring is, of course, important to be notified when something goes wrong in your environment. And we're calling it Datadog, it's called monitors, which is essentially alerting you. So here you've got a monitor where you have different ones: threshold, alerting, anomaly detection, or also watchdog stories, right? So you have different scenarios. So forecasting, for example, this one is a forecast one, right? So you can see that we're actually using also two different metrics from Kubernetes and creating a percentage. In Kubernetes, you're allocating micro CPUs and then how many you're allowed to use. We're using these metrics to get a percentage. And when this percentage reaches a certain threshold or goes beyond, let's say, what have we got configured here, beyond 55% or 80 or whatever you like to see, we can actually alert you based on a forecast model. So that means that we alert you based on if this trend continues at the point of time, you will have resource issues 2 hours from now or 3 hours from now. Of course, it's very reactive and preventative measures in order to get on top of that and allocating more resources. Okay, so then I wanted to show you a few other bits and pieces: universal service monitoring and application performance monitoring. Universal service monitoring is a way of it is enabled by a switch within the Datadog agent, which runs on your Kubernetes cluster. And then from there on, which we're utilizing eBPF and capturing network traffic, which allows you to give you things like throughput, retries, latencies, and so forth, without having to touch anything of your existing configuration. So that allows you to create a network map, and I'll show you that in a little second. So the other part is application performance monitoring. That's tracing. That's probably going a little bit further than Kubernetes. This is essentially the applications running in your containers, and we're doing application performance tracing. We can ingest the tracing libraries to your DevOps team's containers by a library injection. So that means the application teams, they don't have to change any of their codes. We're injecting the libraries and enabling the trace agent. So how that looks like is in here. So in here, we're looking at, here you see universal service monitoring, I selected. And this list, what you see here is now essentially auto-discovered services in your Kubernetes cluster. And you're providing you with a high-level metrics like error rate, latencies, and so forth. Yeah, for example, there's also deployment in here as well. And we're also providing, we can integrate it with DORA metrics, probably more interesting for the DevOps team, right? So deployment metrics, for example, is measured by adding another service tag or version tag to your labels in your configurations. So if you now look at one of those, you get these high-level metrics which you've got, and then again, all these different correlations which you've got also there. Okay, so that is one thing I wanted to mention as well. I didn't want to forget that as well. So here you've got your overview of key metrics here, retries, errors, and so forth. This is actually monitoring HTTP traffic, API requests, and so forth, looking at the traffic, and then monitoring these requests. So, but what is also important for this, and lots of our customers are actually taking it up, this is like an inventory of all our services which we've got. So if we go into one of those in here, we can now also assign ownership to this. So that means we are adding additional metadata in here, who is the owner, who's the contact person, who is on call, and so forth. So it makes it very easy to have everything in place. So Datadog is now showing you that a particular application had a hiccup or reduced latencies. The alert is being triggered, you're getting pulled back to this page, and you already have a contact person who is responsible, or who's probably the next person who can help you with this. So that was from a service catalog, and that was our list. So, and this is now our map around this. So if you do this map is now built out by Universal Service Monitoring. I mentioned Universal Service Monitoring is enabled by a simple switch in the Datadog agent configuration. We're monitoring the network traffic, and with that, we of course understanding who is talking to whom, and we're able to build out that service map. These kind of service map are of course very useful to understand how these applications communicate with each other. It's almost like a live updated visual diagram of your environment. It makes it easy for new people who come on board to understand how these applications actually hang together. Okay, so one thing I wanted to show you, and that is I wanted to show you one example. I talked to you about the collaboration between different teams. So what you're looking at here is not really Kubernetes related, it's APM. So this is now an example or a story I wanted to tell. If you're DevOps people, if you're utilizing your Kubernetes clusters, they're looking at screens like this to understand how individual calls, how their applications are performing. So if there's a problem somewhere, they can analyzing using this span graph and all these different microservices which run on the Kubernetes cluster communicate. What I wanted to show you is how that is all correlated for you. Let's say we are application person, we have got our information, we see our errors, we have got our infrastructure here. There we get our metrics connected. Yeah, so we can see or quickly check whether there has been a resource constraint of your Kubernetes environment, right? We get metrics from our runtime environments and so forth. Again, we get all the logs correlated from our application or also from our containers and so forth. Yeah, this is all correlated for you for that particular transaction. Right? And that's what I mentioned earlier. Now, the handover to the Kubes team or the networking team is instant. All what you need to do is copy and paste that URL, and literally your colleague would end up on the same view with the same tab open. So that's the power of having a single source of truth and fast collaboration, which ultimately helps you to come to the root cause much quicker. So you've got our networking things before, and essentially that's some extracted metrics. I showed the network map earlier. We can see the processes here as well of your host and your pod as well. And then we are, of course, also doing the database monitoring, right? The applications talk to a database. From an application point of view, we can see the database calls, and then we can dive in deeper into the database. Not the KubeOps team, but whoever is responsible. Okay? So I wanted to show you that also from the other side. They hand over from the application team to potentially the KubeOps team or whoever is the next person in line who can assist with the potential root cause analysis. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about is Kubernetes and log files. So log files is a big part of any IT operations, and Datadog has a very comprehensive logging engine. And you saw already how we are integrating with our log files in the different tags, and that we're bringing the log files from the application Kubernetes and so forth together in a single interface, all for your quick access. So here we're looking at log files which are coming from Kubernetes. So I pre-filtered this to make sure that we're only looking at log files from Kubernetes. So everywhere there's a Kubernetes namespace attached, that's the log files we're looking at. I mentioned Watchdog as well. Here, Watchdog you can see here. But this is Watchdog Insights. So that is our AIOps engines highlighting certain things he finds out here. For example, we had like a peak and error messages there. So if you wanted to, can now drill in deeper and investigate what Watchdog found out for you. So, but what I wanted to show you in terms of, let's say we want to find out which of our Kubernetes namespaces are the noisiest from a logging point of view. So we have got a couple of tools available here. Let's say go to by the pie chart, and we can do it by, let's say, by status, right? So that gives us an idea in terms of, by service I clicked on, what services produces the most log files, right? Or if I'm interested in status, right? Where our, what type of log file contributes to most of our logging costs, right? So we are helping a lot of customers also with saving logging costs, because if you look at 90%, and that's, I see that with any customer environment, the majority of log files are information log files, right? So we are with Logging Without Limits. We have got the potential, the capabilities, for example, to do sampling on your info log files. And that, of course, gives you great power to reducing your log ingestion cost or log indexing costs. But what I wanted to show you is the namespace. So we're looking at Kube namespace. So here we now can see which Kube namespaces contribute most of our log ingestion. Yeah? We can see the default one. There's a lot of stuff sitting in default. We can now go in here and, for example, exclude our default. If you want to see the next one is Kube 7. If this is not the right virtualization for this, we can then go, for example, to a top list to give you an overview. Who are the biggest ones, right? So if you wanted to investigate, we can go deeper, how many, and so forth. Where can we potentially optimize our log indexing? So once you have got one of those pie charts here as well, again, within Datadog, you can then save it to a particular dashboard, and it saves it to a new dashboard, and you've got it available there, right? And that is true for the screen, any kind of screen. I pointed that out earlier in the Kubernetes overview screen. There was a little export button where you can copy. That is true everywhere. So it's again meant for you to be very quickly when you're looking at something which is interesting. You just say, okay, I want to save that in my dashboard, and boom, you're done. Yeah, so makes it very easy to keep virtualization, which we are working on, or investigations, very easy to build out your dashboards with. Okay, and that brought me almost to an end. I wanted to show you also a couple of things. We talked about log optimization and being able to filter on things. We have got everything what you send to Datadog is available for Livetail. That means even if you don't want to indexing, let's say you don't want to have all your debug logs indexed all the time, you still have them available for 15 minutes for searching, yeah, but you don't pay for the indexing. We have got flex logs available as well for large volume, longer retention periods, which is more cost effective. The more you use it, the more cost effective it becomes. So if I quickly show you the logging side, how that works, and also how to control logs from within Kubernetes. That means you can now, within your manifests, you can actually specify how you want to index and how you want to sample. That means you create a couple of labels, which are, for example, DD index 14. So that means we want to send it to index 14, and we want to do a sampling rate of 50%. The Datadog agent picks up these labels, adds them as tags to the logs. That is being sent to the Datadog pipeline. There we are applying sampling. We also can do a sensitive data scanner if there's some sensitive data which you want to mask out or so. We also can create metrics from log files, right? If you, for example, have index for 7 days, but you want for a particular account, you want to keep it for a longer period of time, you can create a metrics and keep it for 15 months. And then after that, we make the decision 7 days or 14 days for searchability. And then after that, we have the large amount of flex tier or flex log. And then, of course, our archive to S3. So for long-term archive. These don't go hand in hand. There can be either or both in combination. You can combine them every way you want them. And with this, I come almost to the end. So just an overview of what is all searchable. So everything is searchable here. You've got your Livetail, your different indexes. flex log and the archiving as well. So we call that logging without limits, provides you the best of both worlds, have all your data searchable, but then be very subscriptive in terms of how long you want to index certain type of data, whether by application status and so forth. And with that, I conclude my demonstration. I hope I gave you a bit of an overview. There was a bit of a harbor tour, and I hope I sparked a couple of ideas what how Datadog might be able to help you in the future.
Do we have any questions for him? Bring the.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a few questions like here and how does Datadog get this information? Can you discuss a little bit more?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so where and how does Datadog get this information? I mean, all the charts, all the information.
Where the informations are kept? Yeah, all the Datadog is a SaaS platform, so all the information are being sent to Datadog and then kept at Datadog's end. So with the log files, you've got then the options as well. Of course, the indexes are stored at Datadog. What you want to archive to S3, you can archive to your own S3 hosted bucket.
So this information has to leave my organization and send to Datadog.
Correct, yes.
Is this safe? Is there any leakage?
No, that's safe. We have also, if you are interested in understanding more about our certification and the safeties, there's a webpage trust.datadog.com. You can see all our ISO 27000 and so forth, right? And of course, all the traffic is encrypted in transit, and it's safe. We have over 25,000 customers who said trusting us with their data and sending them every day. Yeah. So, however, if you have a use case where you want to be able to filter data on-prem first before you send them anywhere, we also have a product which was a purchase from Vector, which allows you to actually do the filtering on-prem before you send them to Datadog.
I'm interested. I think my question is a little bit related. So how would you work in scenario that healthcare data or some health-related data, let's say organization in Australia that have to comply and have all the data within that Australia, the Datadog being the SaaS system?
Yeah, so currently we are hosting in Japan, Europe, and the US. This is where our data centers are sitting. So at some point in the future, I expect to have a data center in Australia as well, but there's no firm date on that.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. Just want to ask regarding a technical question, so I believe you install Datadog, you need some form of operator to be installed on the cluster itself. And just wondering if it's the same as Kubernetes where you have got the automatic service discovery installed with Datadog.
Yes, so you deploy data with Helm or a Datadog operator.
Yeah.
So that rolls out essentially like a daemon set. Each node runs a Datadog agent collecting the information. Yeah.
And the service discovery is automatic.
The service discovery, yeah, for example, that was the universal service monitoring. So we can enable that we automatically discover everything what's going on in a cluster and provide you with golden metrics as well, right? And then with that, we can build out, for example, the network map, visualizing how these services communicate. And we also have a service catalog where we can then, firstly see in a list form how the services performing, and we can also manage them and add additional metadata to it. For example, documentation and owner and so forth.
Thank you. We have time for one last question.
Okay. I saw service management. So whenever there's an outage, there's a service management ticket get created, and how does that work?
Yes. So I showed you about the monitors in Datadog. Datadog, we of course integrate with ServiceNow, we integrate with PagerDuty, we can send emails, we can send messages into Teams or Slack and so forth. So there are lots of different avenues where you can then raise a ticket. Datadog itself, by the way, has its own ticket management system inside as well, so you could work through them as well. But to answer your question is, yeah, we have integrations with all kinds of third-party providers. What tool are you using?
ServiceNow.
ServiceNow. Yeah, with ServiceNow we have integration which raises a ticket. For example, if you have a monitor going red, it raises a ticket. If you're working on this one now and the monitor goes green again, Datadog even goes out to ServiceNow and closes off the ticket in ServiceNow if you want. So it's bi-directional communication.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan.
Yeah, pleasure.
Really good talk. And yeah, if you haven't understood before, if you don't monitor your Kubernetes cluster,
Hey guys, while we're waiting, actually, there is a few questions to Stefan online. So do you want to have a look at the questions and answer the question? Sure. Actually, I don't know what's the question. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we have questions from our online attendees from So we've got a few questions here. And the first one from Himas is Datadog, does it support on-premise deployment?
So Datadog is provided as SaaS platform. So all the data are being sent back to the Datadog SaaS environment and then processed there.
Thank you so much. And the question from Grant is there support for Windows nodes?
Yes, there's support for Windows nodes. We even support Kubernetes on Windows as well.
Okay, thank you so much again.
Can you let him host again?